when you are really connected to some people, there is an energy, I think, that is shared, that, when you've spent a lot of time with them, it doesn't go away when you are physically detached from them. And which is why sometimes when you find out that someone has passed away who you haven't seen in years and years and years, it hits you in the gut as if they were right next to you.
Demystifying the mystical and celebrating the ordinary moments of grace in our lives. This is Ordinary Grace. I'm Matt Guerrero. Welcome to the conversation. This week we continue our interview with Logan Crow, Executive Director of the Frida Cinema, an art house theater in Santa Ana, California. Picking up where we left off last episode, Logan will share his own personal experiences with therapy before delving into his life as an empath and how that colors his view of cinema, art, and human connection. Have you had a personal experience in your own life where you were able to drastically change the way you looked at things and thought about the world?
Therapy. Yeah, no, absolutely. I had the world's greatest therapist. No, I was a very, after, I guess throughout high school. So a couple things. One is I very much, as one doctor said, the poster boy for ADHD. But, I was born in 1975. So, my formative years, they didn't really have a name for this. And, as a child, I was very, very smart, huge reader. I forget what the number is because I think it's all silly, but apparently my, genius IQ. And then, right around junior high through high school, I was just not doing well. My grades were horrible. And every teacher, I still have old report cards because I save stuff. I love saving things. I'm huge on nostalgia. One note after another. Logan is too smart to be failing my class. Logan needs to apply himself. Not quite sure why Logan is doing so poorly, except for literature, English, anything that was more, open to interpretation, theoretical, things like that. Mathematics and science are too set for me. You can't bend that,
Yeah.
But if I was interested in something, I would do very well at it. Art, music, go figure, right? And so then, and now one would say, okay, well, let's look at this or that. But back then it was like, almost like I was being, what's the word I'm looking for? Subordinate. I can't think of the word, but that I was, intentionally failing the classes I wasn't interested in. When honestly, I studied. I would open the book and I would look at things and they'd be gone. I would take notes and remember, and then it'd be gone. I just couldn't retain it. My mind would not have it. It just wanted to focus on the things that I was interested in. I would just, my old notebooks looked like, something that some deranged person wrote on the rickety roller coaster with a pen that had a vibrating unit in it that would make it fly around in the hand. It was just nonsense. And then in the margins, A to Z films, Alice in Wonderland, Babe, Children of the Corn, Diner, just alphabetized movies on every margin that I could think of, a director with all of his films underneath it, that I was just writing out in the middle of when I'm supposed to be taking notes in science class, So with them not knowing what's up, they sent me to therapy, and I just was lucky to land the most. I remember sitting across from this therapist. I went to a couple that I didn't really mesh with, but this one in particular came recommended to me by a friend of mine who was a very punk rock spirit. And, I swear by this lady. I'm like, all right. So I went to see her. And I remember in the first session, she sort of like switched legs, she had her legs crossed. And I noticed a tattoo on her ankle. And for some reason, I'm like, okay, all right, that's kind of cool. Anyway, just incredible approach. And what really her whole focus was, which maybe is all therapists' focus. I don't know. She's the only one I saw regularly, 7 years, was just reframing. Replacing old tapes, getting me to recognize that the voices in my head that were telling me that I couldn't do this or couldn't do that were not my voices. that that wasn't me, that is what came from a lot of the chaos in my household growing up, that came from teachers, that came from family members who, when I would say I love film, I want to be in the arts, would tell me that, I will starve to death or whatever. Um, it was a lot of work to, you know, find my own voice, and and things like, well, how do I know what voice is mine? Well, what do you want to do, Logan? Well, I want to be in cinema. Okay, that's your voice. That's it. That's
Yeah,
what
right.
you want. That's your voice. Okay. And so anything that's telling you, but that's not coming from you, and so a lot of that work, um, and a lot of books that she would recommend that really changed me, and that I would buy for friends, honestly, like, hey, check this out. Books on codependency, books on 7 Habits of Highly Effective, just little everything, little things that would
Yeah.
get me to look at, and also understanding too, as someone who both had, not the best upbringing, I had a great upbringing. I don't want to knock my parents. I love them. I just saw them last night. They're great. But again, I respect and recognize and appreciate the fact that they were really young when they had us. And also, like I said, from a mom, like, suddenly she's in a new world where she was just intimidated by everything. And people can be very, very mean to minorities with thick accents. And so she'd feel at home.
Before we started recording, you described yourself as an empath, and I wonder how that manifests in your life, and how that affects your interactions with other people.
Yeah, it's one of those words, empathic, where I still to this day don't know how literal that is, and I wonder sometimes, is it as authentic as what that word suggests, which is that I can feel, that I can sympathize to a really visceral level what people are feeling, or am I just a really good reader of people, and a good communicator, and can see sort of where they're coming from, and meet them there. But I honestly, with time, have thought that it's I really do sometimes feel, not in any way, shape, or form somebody's pain, let's say, but I feel that they are in pain, and I feel that inside, not just because of what I'm seeing, but just something that I'm feeling. Um, there have been more than a few times in my life, and generally surrounding the same 2 people that I've known since I was a kid, but sometimes beyond that, where I'll suddenly call somebody after a while, and it'll happen to be at this very, very bad time in their life. Something just happened. And I don't for a moment think that makes me psychic in any way, shape, or form. That's not the word for it. But I just think that when you are really connected to some people, there is an energy, I think, that is shared, that, when you've spent a lot of time with them, it doesn't go away when you are physically detached from them. And which is why sometimes when you find out that someone has passed away who you haven't seen in years and years and years, it hits you in the gut as if they were right next to you. And, so I have felt that, I've often been good at diffusing things. If there's, a couple people that are, if I'm in a group and there's an argument, I don't know if it's the Libra in me, I've had people like, well, that's because you're a Libra. I'm like, whatever. But I could generally kind of feel both sides and understand that you have 2 people who are looking at the other and finding 0% intellect or understanding in the other. And sometimes I'm able to be like, no, I kind of see where this person's, I don't agree with this person, but you got to understand where they're coming from. I agree with you. I don't agree that this other person is completely off base or is hateful or whatever you want to throw at them. Really try to understand this, so that at that sort of level of kind of understanding where people are coming from, I've been good at it, and sort of meeting people where they're at. But no, I think where the empath comes in is a perfect example. And I mean, and again, I don't know if this is empathic versus I'm a big believer in the idea of energy, that we are energy, that energy is shared, that, you know, like I had this image once when I was 18. I was with my friend Robert, and we were really, really close. And he was like, we started talking about the idea of being soulmates. And I said, yeah, but I think I have a lot of different soulmates. And I was kind of naming all my soulmates. And I said, and I hear people talk about how they only have one, or they only have one true love. But I honestly think that one can have like 17 true loves by the time. And I said, and I often think about the Big Bang. It's kind of weird, but I think about the Big Bang happening, and there was this huge explosion that sent rocks and matter and energy flying. And then those rocks would break up into little rocks, and then they would break up into smaller rocks and smaller rocks, and then they would turn into this and that and algae, whatever. And we're still flying. We're still, just flying out of that explosion. And I think that there are some people that were cut off of the same rock. So growing up in my 20s, I used to tell people, like, I really feel like you were cut from the same rock that I was. And then I would try to kind of explain that, that we are projectiles from the same point of origin in this huge explosion, and therefore connected in some way, because you'll know it when you meet somebody. There's no other, what is the explanation? When you meet someone, and whether it is romantic or not, and for me, generally not. For me, it's generally not in a sexual way, just sort of a familiarity of like, we know each other somehow. That to me is the only thing I can think of as to where that might come from, is that we were from the same point of origin in some cosmic way. So I think tied to that is my idea of how everything is connected. I think tied to that is my idea that fundamentally we're all in the same ride, and we're all from the same larger chunk, if not, some of us are from the same smaller, tiny chunk, but for that same reason, I think that these things affect us. I remember when the huge tidal wave hit Thailand.
Right. Yeah.
Over the next 2 days, almost half of my friends broke up with each other. Like, all these breakups happened, and there were depressed people. And I remember going, some of these people, they don't watch TV. They don't care about what's it's sadly, like, they're not, maybe they know that there was a tidal wave, but they're not going to stay up at night about it, but they're affected. And I remember thinking, like, there's got to be a connection to this. Why is everyone breaking up? Why is everyone so upset and angry today? And I'm like, it would make sense if we believe that we're all connected, that such a huge and sudden, to quote Star Wars, disturbance in the universe, if that's the right, did I say that right? Because otherwise I'll get like chased.
Disturbance in the force.
Thank you. God damn it. As soon as I said it, I'm like, that's not right. That is not right. I missed the word. Disturbance in the force. Exactly. Like, why wouldn't this huge disturbance in our force not affect everything? And maybe some people are more attuned to it, but you don't have to be attuned to it to feel that shake or to have it affect you, if we are indeed all connected on some spiritual level, or if that's too strong a word for you, an energy level, because at the end of the day, that's science. That's not highfalutin, desert speak. We're energy. It's what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and some people would call that spirituality. I call it spirituality, but really it's, where it comes from. So, I think maybe being in tune with that idea and sort of feeling those shifts maybe is what I mean when I say that I do feel empathic. Those are examples, I guess. I'm not, Christopher walking down the street and someone, it's not
grabbing strangers and freezing.
Exactly. It's not about that. It's just, I feel that, I guess I appreciate that level of connection. And there have been times in my life where, like I said, I'll call someone at the right moment, or I'll feel that something's off and with someone and ask them, are they all right? But again, it could be at the end of the day that I just read people. Well, who knows? I don't know. That's it's a mystery, as David Lynch would say, but
Right.
that's, I think, where I use that word and what I mean by it. Going back to giving books to my friends,
Yes.
one of the things that in therapy I learned, which was really, really fascinating to me, and that I talk to my friends about, who I know struggle with the same sort of thing that I do, and who I know also had difficult I hate the word dysfunctional family, because I think that with
It's a judgment
it's
when
a
it shouldn't
judgment,
be.
and also with
Yeah.
movies, your dysfunctional families are generally very, 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 very messed up. You know, if you're reading someone grew up in a dysfunctional family, that in a movie probably means that there's abuse and all this other stuff. It was a loud and chaotic childhood. I'll tell you that. A lot of fighting, a lot of finger pointing, and just and very fiery, passionate parents, and but one of the things that I learned in therapy and that I read a lot about was this idea that a lot of kids who grow up in these households have a really hard time entering adulthood. And one of the things that was really, really interesting that I worked through therapy about was this idea that codependent kids and people who had dysfunctional families, because the family was dysfunctional, because the parents were dealing with their own things, there wasn't really much time and focus left on rearing the kids towards adulthood and really providing models for functional adulthood. And why do we expect that a flip will switch at a certain time when we are suddenly going to know how to be adults? And that at the end of the day, what we are as children are people who then become the models that they were given. And if you don't have strong functional models, you're going to have a really rough time with that. And so, I got to read a lot of books about adulthood. And I used to tell people, I still do sometimes, when they're struggling with this, you may need to read about this like a manual. Why do you
Yeah.
expect that if you're going to learn how to work a fancy remote control, you're going to read or go online and read about how to do that, but you don't think that it may be a good idea to read a few books about being a self-sufficient adult? It's almost unfair that we put it on ourselves without understanding that, of course, it doesn't just come to you. It's not innate, and if you don't have the models to push you in that direction, you're not gonna know how. So that's something else. Going back to your question about, what did it take for you, and it is not just therapy, but a lot of reading and a lot of self-help, and a lot of having to, even with myself, get past the idea, because I also, like a lot of people, were like, self-help, just the
Right.
term itself, how dare you? But it exists for a reason, man. I mean, there are sections and books and volumes for a reason, and that is that we cannot expect to know everything. And it's unfair of us to expect to know everything through what? Osmosis or innately. If you're having a hard time with balancing your checkbook, pick up a book on how to balance a checkbook. It's, jump on
Yeah.
YouTube now. You don't even have to get a book now. Jump on YouTube. If you put balanced checkbook on YouTube, there's probably 717,000 videos from around the world with people who will step by step tell you how to balance your checkbook, tell you how to fix your toilet, whatever it is, how to have a relationship, how to, if you end up with someone who is an anxious person, how to be in a relationship with an anxious person, how to be a good partner to someone who has phobias, how to be a good partner to someone who is an extrovert when you're an introvert, how to be a good partner to someone who's an introvert when you're an extrovert. You can't just try to figure that out on your own. You can't, so reading about these things, researching about these things, it's exciting too when you're reading something and you're like, that's me. Like the first book I picked up on codependency, It was like, it started with, does this sound like you? And it was 3 pages of the Logan Crow story. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like when I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was taking this test, and there was one question, and I'm like, wait a second. So I go to the doctor, I'm like, this isn't everybody. And he goes, what? And I'm like, there's a question here that says, when I'm reading a book, I will sometimes find that even though I've been reading, I completely forgot the last 2 pages. And I go, wait, why are we in Chile now? Oh my God. And I'll have to flip back a few pages. Oh, I got in a plane to Chile. That's not everybody? And he's like, no. I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, no. I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, no. I mean, to an extent, sure. If someone gets distracted, yes. But does this happen often? I'm like, it happens every time I'm reading a book. I have to go back. He's like, well, please mark yes, because that's a big one, and I don't know that. And so there's those moments of incredible realization when you realize you're on the right track towards getting the help you need or the insight you need, that you only get from diving into books and conversations and these sorts of things. So I'm a huge proponent of self-help therapy, books, YouTube, whatever you got to do. Don't try to figure it out on your own. It's almost asinine to assume that living is something you can just figure out when, we have manuals for everything else.
As society becomes more disconnected from each other, one of the few kind of communal events we have left is going to the theater, or sometimes, going to a play or going to a concert or something. But what are your own personal favorite communal experiences from watching a film, either from watching it just as a film goer or as now the owner of a theater?
I think my favorite, there have been a few really, really impactful moments. The first one that I just felt the exhilaration, just absolute exhilaration, was when we first did our first shadow cast of Forbidden Zone. Raucous Oingo Boingo musical from, I think, 1982 or 1980 or both sometimes, if you look it up. That Richard Elfman, Danny Elfman's brother, who is in his own right an incredible musician and artist and jack of all trades and chef and, really a remarkable man, who directed the film. And, I reached out to do a shadow cast. And by the time we got to, the big night, he had signed on to reprise his own role in the film on stage as the shadow cast. So when that moment came and play his brother's role as the devil in this white suit. And so when that moment came and he turned around and it's Richard Elfman, the audience went absolutely insane. And it was, for me, a cherished moment, because I think that if there's one thing I could change about myself, it would be that I would see myself and see the Frida and see its impact the way other people do. For me, it's I love it. And it's what I feel like I was put on this planet to do, but it's so much work and so much focus and so much juggling that I rarely get an opportunity to stop and feel it. And so that's why it's such a big deal to me. Every time someone writes about us, every time someone says a positive review, I just read it. I share it because because part of it is I need to absorb it, because it's hard for me to do that. Not just, I think, because of time, but also because there is this part of me, I honestly think that is afraid of letting it go to my head and having that show, I guess. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but that was incredible. When Dolores Huerta came to the Frida for the documentary about her, that was a very, very, very incredible day for me. She came out to do the film, and I worked with our city councilwoman at the time, Michelle, to work with PBS to allow us to do an extra screening of Dolores just for Santa Ana female students. So if you were a female in elementary, high, junior high, you could register. And so we had a full house of young women, future leaders, that Dolores Huerta spoke to. And I would kind of peek my head in every once in a while and just see their faces. And as she would tell her story, see their eyes widen with like, oh my God, this is a very important person in front of us. And to see her contextualize the impact that the union's made and that her work has made. That was an incredible moment too. I felt very proud of that moment. But the best for me was that day. You know, she was sitting up on the stage, and this woman got up on the audience, and she was just very, very passionate and fiery. And she's like, and mind you, this was 3 years ago, maybe even longer, maybe three. I think Trump was already in office, and was like, oh my God, I can't believe what's happening right now. And she was a little older. So she's like, you know, in the 60s, we were on our cars, we were burning our bras, we we're doing all this stuff. And she's like, you know, why is it happening right now? What's it going to take? Why aren't we out on the streets? You know, why? And she's like, you know, I just feel, and what's interesting is we are now on the streets, you know, we got there, but she's like, why aren't we doing this and that? And she's like, you know, what is it going to take? What can we do? Because this is maddening. And Dolores, she was just kind of smiling and nodding. And then, the woman finished her question, and Dolores just leaned into her mic and said, vote. And get everyone you know to vote. Vote. Vote is my answer. Vote. Next. It was just that simple. You know what I mean? Like, and it's true. You know, and I'm like, what are you going to do? I mean, that's change the leadership. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, or like they said last week, vote as your life depends on it. You know, like, so, you know, that was great.
You can't change society if half of that society is too apathetic to get to.
Correct. You know, and if we've entered a climate now where the portion that has always been, I guess, a little misdirected, is feeling more and more empowered about that position. That is the new challenge, I think. You know, people are not hiding anymore about where they've been misled, I think, and it's unfortunate, you know. You know, I think another one, just really quickly, was when Henninger Elementary came. So Henninger Elementary, this was incredible. So, you know, I was reached out to by, you know, we had high school and colleges rent the Frida for their student showcases. And I got a call from Henninger. At the time, I was unfamiliar with Henninger. It was like maybe 2 years into the Frida. And they're like, we want to come with the student showcase. We want to bring the students over. Okay, no problem. And all of a sudden, because they walked from the school, this entire school of kids was walking across 4th Street to come to the theater. It's like 8 a.m. And I'm like, oh my God, these are little kids. It's an elementary school. And so I'm like fascinated. I want to watch their movies. Like, they have a student showcase? Like, what the hell? So they all come in. And long story short, the file that the teachers had put their films on was in the wrong format. So we had to transfer them, which took about an hour while the kids were downstairs. And I'm like, okay, well, we have to come up with some way to entertain them. So at the time, I'm like looking at what we had. And I'm like, no, we're not going to show Solo. We're not going to. Okay. And I found Little Rascals Blu-ray. Sorry. And I'm like, I'm going to put the Little Rascals on. F it. Maybe they've seen it. Maybe they don't. And so I put it on. And while we're trying to figure out the drive, I go downstairs. Hey, folks, we're going to start in a minute. In the meantime, enjoy some Little Rascals. And then I realize about 20 minutes in, as we're getting closer, I'm like, they're probably hating this. I'm going to go downstairs. Yeah. So I go downstairs and I open the door. And I'm looking. They're eating it up. They're laughing. And I'm like, this is surreal. Like, they love this. This is like so old, you know, and it's not, they're not making fart jokes and, you know, Schnarf isn't in it, whatever. And I just aged myself. But the point is, they're into the Little Rascals. And I'm like, this is amazing. And so we get the thing fixed. I come downstairs to, you know, and I said to the kids, I don't know, I just had this moment. And I'm like, so I want you guys to really consider, because I looked it up. I'm like, oh, wow, what you just saw, you know, was almost 100 years old. It was something like 80 plus years old. And I'm like, you know, this is almost 100 years old. And I'm like, and just as those kids could have never imagined that almost 100 years later, a room full of children in Orange County would be seeing them on the big screen. You know, we're going to see some films today that you young filmmakers 100 years from now, another school of kids might be watching on. And you just saw all this, like, you know, talking to each other and stuff. And I was like, yeah, you know, I had this moment of like, yeah, that was kind of cool. But also just like, this is what it's all about. Like, all of this has been what it's all about. Like, and then we saw the films and they were great. And, you know, some of them just shockingly great. You know, I you know, cinema is, you know, not just its art form, but its expression. You know, it's art. And, maybe we're showing films where the filmmaker can't be in the room, but we still get to see their expression. We still get to see Kubrick's expression, and Hal Ashby's expression, and whoever it is that you're watching. Their narrative, their story, their passion, their dream, whatever, is immortalized for us to appreciate and be entertained by and be inspired by. So it is a big deal for me when I actually can have a filmmaker come out and see that consumed by an enthusiastic audience. One more that I'll just end with is when we had Tom Holland come out, not Spider-Man, the director Tom Holland,
right,
for Fright Night.
That was a great night, by the way.
That was incredible. And I love Fright Night. My thought was that everybody loves Fright Night, and they've all seen it a billion times, and certainly it was a full house. But when he got up there, he talked about how he has been used to Child's Play being the film that people invite him out to, and that he was stunned that we chose Fright Night. And I'm thinking, well, that's an obvious pick for me. I love Child's Play, but Fright Night, come on, And he talked about how, because one of the questions I always ask, generally ask before when we play a retro film is, who's never seen this? And who has seen this a million times, but never on the big screen? Because I love both those audiences. And so I had asked that night, and he was floored to see that the room was almost 50-50. And so, he was saying and he talked about how it was his first film, and he didn't know what he was doing really, and that, it was very personal to him when he wrote it, and that there was a lot of touches that were really personal to him, and that it's a trip that, over 20 years later, there's a theater full of people sold out watching this film, and that it's comprised of people who love it and still love it years later, and people who'd never seen it, who are seeing it for the first time on the big screen, and just how incredible and magical. I mean, he couldn't have been more humble, and he got teary-eyed, and then I got teary-eyed. And that, to me, again, was just a reminder that, these are artists. I think we put the filmmakers in a different place, but at the end of the day, and I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule, but these are artists who made these works, and they should be shared, and they should still be respected and put up on big screens, and audiences should come out in community and take them in. I get emails sometimes that ask, or not emails, but comments where they'll be like, well, why would I go see 2001 when I have the Blu-ray? I don't get offended by that, but I think, why do people fly to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa when I could print her up right now? I could give you a bigger print of the Mona Lisa than the postcard she's painted on at the museum behind 16 sheets of glass, and you're about 50 feet out from her, or whatever it is. Why go see whatever it's called, Sunday in the Park, or I don't forget what it's called, when you can see it in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and dive into it and see it in all its texture with Cameron. Why see it's a different experience to see a film on the big screen, and to be surrounded by it and immersed by it, and have the sound immerse you, and to be with a community of people who are going on this journey with you, to be scared with you, and scream with you, and cry with you, and laugh and quote with you. I think midnight films and cult films, illustrate this better than anything. It's not the same to watch The Room at home. It's not the same to watch to watch Rocky Horror Picture Show at home. It's a whole, a whole new world, as they say. So
I was just wanting to say what I've always appreciated at the Frida is their how welcoming and inclusive everybody is. You have, especially, you never know who's gonna walk through those doors, what kind of walk of life that they're from, And even with like a lot of the rentals, you might have something that's just student filmmakers wanting to see their thing, or you might have a church group coming in the next day to watch something, and they're all treated with the same respect. And I think that's really nice.
Thank you. No, I mean, it's really, really important. Like thank you. I mean, the Frida being a safe space and a welcoming space is very, very important to me. You never know. I mean, look, what did we learn recently? With Chadwick Boseman, you never know what someone is fighting. You just never know where someone's at, and everyone should have a welcoming, be welcomed into spaces and treated with dignity. We have the one sort of rule we have, it's in our agreement, is that we won't tolerate hate speech. We won't tolerate harassment. But beyond that, points of view, discussions, I mean, they're welcome. I want people to be able to feel at home and to be able to express themselves. We're very anti-censorship, with those just few caveats. There is just no room in either direction for people to attack each other at a very personal level based on something that they cannot change about themselves. But I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think it was maybe 3 months into, no, a little longer, maybe 4 or 5 months into the Frida, when we would really sort of already started to show what we were about, and that the Gay and Lesbian Center, which at that point wasn't upstairs yet, they still just had their place down in by 17th, presented us with a safe space sticker and a mug. And to this day, that's still one of my proudest moments. It's a sticker and a mug. And so some people say, okay, well, don't they get that to everyone? I'm like, no, they made it very clear that they're very selective about who they give that to. And it meant the world to me. It's still, that sticker's still up and that mug is still on top of the popcorn maker. Like it was such a important moment for me, because it's important to me. It's important to me that folks feel welcome. The LGBT community, of which I'm a part, we worked really hard to make sure that we were serving that community with things like the drag race that we did, drag race nights, which was such a blast to do while we could do them, and working with the library for Drag Book Storybook Hour. Film festival wise, we've hosted everything from Cambodian films to the Sick Lens Film Festival to Hola Mexico, LGBT films. Like you said, we've had Christian films. When Nancy Reagan died, that was interesting. When Nancy Reagan died, I'm like, there has to be a movie. There has to be a movie that Ronald and Nancy were in together. There has to be. And I found it, Hellcats of the Navy. So then I went, did the research, found the film, and we played Hellcats of the Navy for Nancy. And yeah, I got a couple of emails like, do you know what the Reagans said and didn't? I'm like, I do. I'm well aware. I was there. I said, Nancy was imperfect. All of them are imperfect. There is no perfect politician. I'm sorry to tell you. I said, but there are folks in this community who may want to honor her, and this is for them. And we had one gentleman, and I remember it was almost a cliche, in the sense that he had a naval baseball cap on. Who told me he drove up from San Diego, older gentleman, very older, read about the screening and made his way up to San Diego to watch the movie. And there were maybe 4 people in the audience, and all of them were very grateful. I talked to all of them, but he in particular was like, this is just wonderful. He's like, I haven't seen this movie in years, and I was sad about losing Nancy, and I was just so glad to see a theater was doing this. So I drove up, and that means the world to me. I don't have to feel like I loved her any more or less than he did. I just know that people loved her, and that she was our first lady for 8 years, and that seemed an easy and obvious thing to do. It's to try to find a way to honor her. So, yeah, we really, really do try to be, but it was interesting. We had somebody write once and say, I see you doing Sick Lens Film Festival. When are you going to do a Christian film festival? And I said, start one, bring it to us. I said, we didn't program. The sequence came to us. Like we have an open door. You have very few rules. These are the rules. If you can abide by them, like, and everyone has, and only one time that I've had to tell folks, I'm sorry, you kind of have to go because you just crossed that line just now. But in the 6 years, but we have turned down the one thing we ever turned down. I will share this with you, and that is only because. Well, I was already on the fence, but one of our board members happens to be a renowned child psychologist and was like, look, I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do, but I'll be very disappointed if you, I'm like, gotcha. There was a big anti-vaxxing documentary that was making the rounds, and they reached out to us. And I'm like, maybe from a perspective of playing it and having a dialogue. But there was so much. I mean, I took it to a few different groups, and everyone was like, don't give that film 2 seconds in the sun. And I'm like, this is so tough because that's so antithetical to where I stand on things. I would like to, at the very least, maybe play it and have a panel discussion afterwards. Maybe that's how we can do it. But that was the only thing where I'm like, okay, it seems like the no's outweighs the yeah. And so I wrote back, thank you so much. We're actually not going to proceed with this. That's it. I have said yes to everything else. So, I appreciate you acknowledging that, Sean. I really do.
You're welcome. Every person might have like a little private space where they could go and just be with themselves and think about life and everything. Do you feel that, like, whether it be like church, whether it be like their favorite spot in a park or something, do you feel that the Frida is one of those spaces where anybody could walk in and anything that they can experience or think about can be kind of like their own form of prayer or like anything like kind of like that?
I hope so. I mean, one of the formative books that I read growing up was a book called The Right to Write, and that's the right, R-I-G-H-T, to write, W-R-I-T-E, by Julia Cameron, who are you familiar with Julia Cameron as a writer? She also did
I've heard the title.
The Artist's
Way, right? Yeah. The Artist's Way, morning pages, things like that. 3 sheets of writing in the morning, no matter what. She wrote another book called The Right to Write, and in The Right to Write, and also I think in The Artist's Way, she talks about the artist date. That once a week you should take yourself on an artist date, and she writes about the fact that within an artist, that it helps to sort of look at. As what some people would refer to as an inner child. And maybe those are two different, actually, I don't think she equates the artist with the inner child, so scratch that. But in the same idea that people have within them an inner child, that people have within them an artist, who's stricken by the muse and everything else. And that you need to spend time with your artist, and you need to enrich your artist, and you need to take care of and seek inspiration for your artist. And so she writes about how once a week you should take yourself on an artist date. And I used to do that religiously. I'd go to the New Beverly, I'd go up to the New Art, I'd go to the Museum of Death in Hollywood. I just go places and just walk around by myself and spend some time. I remember seeing Mel Gibson's Hamlet by myself as an artist date. Although I think that was even before I read the book. It just seemed like the thing to do. I'm going to go take myself to see a movie. But that was, I think, the first movie I went to see by myself. That's why it stands out. I remember that. But it is, yes, I think that whether it's going to the movies or going to a play, or like you said, going to the park with a book, with your iPad, it is, for one thing, a break from reality. I think that is healthy. In a way that maybe, shooting heroin to escape reality isn't healthy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think escapism as a concept is unhealthy. It's really about how you do it. But there's certainly nothing unhealthy about going off by yourself to get enriched, and escapism is very, is a pause for your brain, for your soul, from politics, from the world, from financial pressure, from the kids, from the parents, from the in-laws, whatever. It's good to take a break. And especially if you are a creative soul, to go out and enrich yourself, because I think within that becomes avenues for inspiration. You might see something or hear something that sparks something. You might watch a movie, not feel anything, be like, that was interesting, walk out, someone's talking about the movie, you talk to them for a few minutes, and then something they say inspires you, or suddenly you've got a new friend and your life has changed. One of my proudest moments is that there's literally a life out there that sprang from one of my crazy ideas, which was the zombie walk in Long Beach. Two people that I consider friends now met at Zombie Walk 2. They were both zombies. They started dating. They got married. They have a kid. His name is Declan. I don't even want to know how old he is now because it'll make me feel old. But Declan wouldn't have happened without Zombie Walk. That still blows my mind. That still blows my mind. Yeah. So, we need to go out there. We need to, and I say that right now in the middle of a pandemic, but we do. We need to find ways to. David Lynch is big on transcendental meditation. I have been trying. I love it when I do it. It's like going to the gym. Once you're there, it's a blast. And you get your endorphins. You're like, thank God I came. But getting there is a whole other story. You should find, follow your bliss, as the B-52s, and I'm sure people before that said, find a place that feels like home. The Frida Cinema would not exist without my 2.5 years of volunteerism at the American Cinematheque at the Egyptian. When I found out that everyone that works in the lobby for the most part's a volunteer, I signed up. I was living in LA at the time, and I volunteered for 2.5 years at the Egyptian and was so inspired by the world around me, by the friends I met, by everything I saw, that it became a life calling for me. And I followed it, and the Frida happened. If I hadn't put myself out there to spend time at a venue that meant a lot to me, that was doing work that meant a lot to me, I would not have thought maybe I can open an art house cinema. So, putting yourself out there is very, very important.
For all our listeners out there, with everything we're going through right now, what are some tips you might have to improve mindfulness, or help people center themselves and just focus on improving themselves and not be worried about everything going on?
Journal. Try to write. This came from therapy, but also some reading I did and a couple of lectures I saw David Lynch do. Your brain is a processing machine first and foremost. Memory is almost incidental and takes a lot of energy. And when we write things down, I've seen all these demonstrations where they really show brain activity. You are releasing the thought, the energy, the feelings about the thought, the pressure. You're putting it down on paper. And in a way, releasing that from your brain at a level of energy. Maybe you're still thinking about it, but it's not as potent because it's been put down. Otherwise, your brain is holding on to it as much as it can for fear of losing it, for fear of it not being documented, for fear of it not being somewhere else inside your brain.
Right.
So writing every day, even if it's just like free. Okay, every morning I get up and I write 3 pages. And if it's just me saying I have nothing to write for 3 pages, that's what you do. But the reason we do that is because you are literally releasing energy from your brain by writing it down and putting it on paper and taking it from here to another place. Like I said, that doesn't mean like, oh my God, I'm not thinking about that thing anymore. No, of course not. But a lot of the energy that's attached to it is released, like literally. That's science. I'm not talking hokum. So writing is very good. This is crazy, but I've been playing this Ring Fit Adventure by Nintendo Switch. It's this like ring that you exercise with, and like it's like literally have lost 11 pounds on this thing. I'm not even joking, in a month.
Oh,
'Cause I'm
congrats.
obsessed with it. Thank you. It's fun. It's so movement. I don't know. Not everyone is, I guess they're really hard to find now, but like, it's that's harder, to say, try to keep, try to move, not keep fit or go to the gym, but just move, get your heart rate up and your endorphins up. Jump on a YouTube video and throw on, YouTube Zumba, YouTube, maybe like YouTube merengue, YouTube Espanol, if you're a Spanish speaker, sorry, Zumba Espanol. Try to move. It's really, I know it sounds silly or simplistic, but movement is good at a variety of levels. It feels good for the soul. It brings your heart rate up and releases endorphins, which are, a very, very wonderful natural way to feel better. If try to move, just, find a very simple little movement exercise on YouTube and follow it. But I think writing is a big one. Try very hard to avoid the media. I mean, it's so painful because one wants to stay informed,
right?
But it's a tough time right now. It's horrible. It is what it is, and so I'm of two minds about that. I mean, as soon as I said try to avoid the media, I felt guilty because I'm like, no, stay informed. But it's hard to absorb all that and at the same time be housebound, and not be able to just go and vent. Maybe, I guess, take it in small amounts. Read the mornings. I don't know. I don't know what the solution to that is. I mean, I'm guilty of the same thing. A morning headline could break my day, basically. So, honestly, like I'll just leave it down to write. I'll forget everything else I said. Try to write down your thoughts, your feelings, keep a journal, for no other reason than just getting it out of your head. I'm not suggesting everyone go publish a journal or keep a diary with a little key. I mean, it's not about any of that. It is literally a scientific thing. Get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper, just whatever, just like help unclog your mind. It's so therapeutic. It's so wonderful. And donate to your favorite nonprofit art house cinema. That feels great. Go to fridacinema.org and make a donation to the Frida Cinema. And I'm telling you, you'll feel good about it. You'll know that you are supporting a pretty amazing organization and run by a pretty amazing guy. Honestly, like, find things you love and if you could find a way, if you can find a way to volunteer from home, there's places that need online volunteerism. Lend yourself to a cause that means a lot to you. But write.
We invite everyone who comes on the show who is comfortable doing so to close out our conversation with a prayer, whatever prayer means to you on a personal level.
You know what? I would like, if I may, it's not a prayer per se, but I'd like to read the Beatitudes. Matthew 5.
No discussion, no argument from these two Catholics.
So blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Amen. You can find out more about Logan and the Frida Cinema at thefridacinema.org, where you can learn more about their upcoming events, including their pop-up drive-in screenings. Next week, we'll speak with actor, storyteller, and podcasting legend Stephen Tobolowsky about his career, his spiritual journey, and dealing with our chaotic times. Ordinary Grace is a conversation about the spiritual and religious life. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate on iTunes. Every rating and review helps another seeker find their way to us. And if you would like to join the conversation yourself, email us at ordinarygracepodcast@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at Podcast Grace. Our theme music is by the band Silent Partner. The show is produced by Sean Woodard. Thank you for listening, and may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be free.